Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My jealous wife demands I fire the new nanny because they were enemies back in high school. After that, you need to think long and hard about whether you want this job? Okay. And after that, am I the jerk for wanting to spend time with my wife instead of babysitting my little sister? Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to fire the new nanny.
But she stole Chad from me while we were in high school.
So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My jealous wife demands I fire the new nanny because they were enemies back in high school. I, male 30s, live with my wife who's in her 30s as well. We both work full-time jobs and we have 3 kids who are 3, 6, and 7. I used to work from home with flexible hours, but I've been offered a promotion which requires me to go to work in person. The pay increase is really significant, so my wife and I agreed I should take the promotion and hire a part-time nanny for our kids. I got in touch with a nanny agency and they matched us up to someone who lives local. They only told us her first name, which was a really common name anyway, but for the sake of storytelling, we'll call her Sarah. I spoke to Sarah on the phone and she seemed really nice. We arranged a day for her to come over and meet my wife and the kids and for us to show her around the house. When the day came around and we met her, it turned out that my wife already knew Sarah. It was really awkward. I wasn't sure how they knew each other until afterwards. My wife told me that back when she was in high school, her boyfriend at the time cheated on her with Sarah, who was in her class. She wasn't enthusiastic about it, but my wife didn't seem to have a problem with Sarah being our nanny at first. Our kids love her, she has lots of experience, and she's available when we need her. After a couple of weeks, with pretty much no issues, my 2 oldest kids came to me and started telling me that they don't want Sarah to come back. I asked them why, and they said that she's evil. I ask what they think she's evil for, and my 6-year-old starts crying and says that Sarah is mean and wants to hurt mommy. I talked to my wife in private, and at first she said she had no idea what the kids were talking about and that it must be because of something that Sarah did. When I pressed it, my wife admitted that she told the kids that Sarah was evil. She said she knows it was a ridiculous plan, but she was hoping that I'd fire her. My wife asked me to fire the nanny because their history makes her uncomfortable. I asked why it wasn't an issue before, and my wife said she just needed to think about it and she's decided Sarah has to go. I told my wife that we can find another nanny, but until then, there's no reason to get rid of Sarah, and that she was out of line for trying to weaponize the kids against her when Sarah is no danger to anyone. My wife disagreed and said that we need to just fire Sarah ASAP and hire a temporary babysitter until we can find another nanny. She said that she wasn't weaponizing the kids, she was just setting boundaries. This turned into a really heated argument, and I called my wife insecure and controlling and told her that she needs to go to therapy. My wife said I'm being inconsiderate of her feelings and I need to put myself in her shoes. This was one of our biggest arguments in a very long time, and I just want a neutral opinion on whether or not I was wrong. Everyone sucks here. Your wife shouldn't be talking smack about Sarah to your kids, but you also shouldn't be insisting that Sarah remain hired. There are plenty of other people who I'm sure would be equally as nice and fun as Sarah, with the added bonus that this one won't have painful beef with your wife. Everyone sucks here. OP, this is just ridiculous. Your wife was way out of line to say to the kids and try to use them like that, and it sounds like she did some actual, hopefully just temporary, emotional damage in doing so. But she's right that Sarah needs to go, immediately. Why the heck would you want to keep your wife in a clearly uncomfortable position, much less continue to keep your kids in this situation? Keeping Sarah around for a couple more weeks just because you don't want to bother finding someone to fill in until you and your wife find a permanent replacement is a terrible idea, and it shows your wife and your kids that you don't give a hoot about their feelings. Save your kids and your marriage, and Sarah, frankly, any more of this dealing with crap. Everyone sucks here. Your wife got cheated on by her ex with the woman who is in your lives and in your kids' lives. The sensible thing to do would have been to say right away, okay, we'll find someone else. You are being inconsiderate of her feelings. That makes you a jerk. Your wife should have never used your kids the way that she did. That was beyond the pale. That makes her a jerk. All in all, it means you all suck. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
Here's an idea. How about OP's wife tells the kids that she lied to them about Sarah?
You need to think long and hard about whether you want this job? Okay. Context. I work in IT in a very small area where everybody knows each other in one way or another, so networking with people is very important. I got a new job in a private school, partly because I knew the consultant acting as hiring manager at the time, but also because he knew I had skills in Azure and its many cloud components, which was the direction he envisioned the school going. Great stuff. I can do the migration no problem, as I've gone through it twice at previous companies. I started just before the summer holidays, which were 9 weeks at this school, so I spent a bit of time getting to grips with the equipment, network, and just generally settling in. It was a small team of myself, 2 desktop guys, 1 part-time, and the consultant and manager, who worked 3 part days, usually 10 a.m. to 2 or 3 p.m. After about 3 months, the school hired a permanent manager and dropped the consultant after he had handed over all of his responsibilities. Things continued as normal. I worked away on getting the prerequisites in place while juggling some other projects, like managed printing and network upgrades. Everything seemed great, although I was being pulled away from my cloud tasks more than I'd like, but figured it was just how things were here with such a small team. Jump forward to December. My 6-month probation was done, so I asked the manager, let's call her D, when we could have a meeting to discuss how things have been and sign off on my probation. She kept putting it off with generic excuses, and it ended up happening in mid-January when she absolutely destroyed me. Instead of talking to me like a reasonable human being, she held up all these microaggressions and spent over 30 minutes unloading them onto me, absolutely crushing my motivation. She also said she doesn't believe the cloud is the right way to go and that I needed to be better at on-premise infrastructure and networking. I had specifically said during my interviews that networking is my weakest area and that I specialize in cloud computing. So essentially, the role I'm supposed to be doing has changed entirely to one that I'm not good at. She's used this as a way to suggest extending my probation while she creates a new role for me that's more fitting, as I don't have the networking skills she's looking for. I was visibly upset and she left me for a minute, but just before she left, she said,
You need to think long and hard about if you want this job, because right now you're not performing well enough to keep it.
I sat there for about 20 minutes, alone in a side room near our office. Thoughts went through my head, doubting myself, worrying about losing my apartment I bought just 6 months ago if I lost this job, worrying what my family would think, and just generally how I'd deal with what I felt like was an inevitability. I tried my best with everything I did, and she still wasn't happy. So I thought about what she said. Do I want this job? No. So that night, I signed up with all the local job agencies, frequently checked job sites, and all the time I was at work, I acted like she had helped me see my errors and that I was working on them to prove myself to her. Actually, I couldn't stand her, and I couldn't stand being in the same room as her. I hadn't taken any of my annual leave days as I had no money after spending all my savings on my apartment, so I didn't see the point in taking time off to sit around. She nagged me about this constantly, saying I'd lose it if it weren't taken, blah blah blah, like I didn't already know how holidays work. I booked a big block of 3 weeks at the end of May as we had family coming to visit. This is relevant later. About 2 months later, I booked a couple days holiday to attend an interview. Obviously, I just told her I fancied a long weekend. I got the job. Not only was it more engaging and relevant to my areas of expertise, but it was a tasty $7,000 pay raise with a bonus scheme up to 25% annually. Sweet. I come back in on Monday, ready to hand my notice in, but she's booked a meeting with me while I was off for 10 a.m. to discuss my new role. I have my notice in an envelope, and I bring that to the meeting. She starts with pretty much saying,
You've gotten a bit better, but still not good enough for this job. So I'd like to propose.
I cut her off and I hand her the envelope. She opens it, reads it, and says,
Oh, okay.
She says,
Well, your notice period is a month, so your final day will be the 8th of June.
I counter with, Actually, I think you'll find that while on my probation period, it's actually only 2 weeks, which brings it to the 25th of May, which is also a public holiday, as is the 24th, so my last day is actually the 23rd of May. She tries to say that I'd passed probation, but I remind her of the letter I signed agreeing to the extension and that I hadn't signed any contract for this new role yet. A bit of back and forth, and she finally concedes. I also remind her that I had almost the entirety of my annual leave, which has to be paid to me when I leave, as my finish date was before they were to be taken. As the school was going through a big cost-saving exercise, this would look really bad on her. She asked me to take them instead of working my notice, which I declined. I'd rather tolerate her for 8 more days and get paid for a full month's pay on top of my normal salary. She reluctantly agreed and said she's going to talk to HR and let them know. On the way out of the meeting, I thanked her for helping me out in January. She looked at me confused, so I reminded her that I needed to think long and hard about whether I wanted this job, and I decided that no, I didn't, and I found a much better package elsewhere. Now I have my own office, complete with coffee machine and mini fridge, staff who work with me on projects, and time to work on Azure features like I'm supposed to, all while getting paid considerably more. Thanks, Dee. P.S. She got the boot 3 months after I left. Apparently, she clashed with a lot of the teaching staff with her management style. Guess I wasn't the only one who didn't get along with her. Am I the jerk for wanting to spend time with my wife instead of babysitting my little sister? I, 24 male, and my wife recently had our 5-year anniversary. We had planned to go to a nice restaurant, then ride in a hot air balloon, and then go to a lake and relax. I was going to buy her flowers and all. Then out of the blue, one day before our anniversary, I get a text from my mom demanding me to babysit my sister for a week, while she and my dad go visit my aunt who recently got diagnosed with leukemia. Now, I love my sister. We're 18 years apart, but are still closer than ever. She has a bit of a mental challenge, but otherwise is a pretty normal kid. I was debating whether to say yes, but I didn't want a kid in tow while I was having a date with my wife. So I politely declined and didn't get an answer, so I thought it was okay. The next day, we're at the restaurant when my phone starts buzzing like crazy. I check it, and it's filled with texts from my mom and dad. They're calling me all sorts of names and saying that they showed up at my house only for it to be empty. Now they're ignoring me. When I write to them, I haven't gotten an answer. Am I the jerk? Edit. My wife and I also have to work for more than half of those days. Me and my wife have known each other since we were kids and started dating when we were teenagers. My sister is currently staying with a family friend who we've known all of our lives. The friend has 2 kids who are very close to my sister. The family friend said she wouldn't mind keeping her for the week as she gets a break from her twins and encouraged me to relax. Edit. My aunt is not in critical condition. She's doing fine. She also lives far away, and it takes a couple of hours to get to her. 3 hours and a little more due to stops and other things, so it takes about 4 to 5 hours probably. Update. I have gone over to the friend's house and gotten them food for the kind gesture. I can clearly see that my sister enjoys the twins' company and the friend doesn't work, so I intend to keep her there. However, the friend informed me that my parents were talking bad about me and my wife in her messages. She told me that they were berating me for being a bad son and that my wife probably convinced me to stay away from an important situation. I intend to speak to them about this once they get back. I don't want to intrude when my aunt has leukemia. Not the jerk. You had plans. You politely declined with notice. You are not your sister's keeper. It's on them to find a sitter, and they had plenty of time to do so, but they failed to do that. I hope you had a lovely anniversary in spite of it all. Edit. Even with the info that your aunt was diagnosed with leukemia, you're not the jerk. It was still on them to either make other plans or communicate with you at all, rather than making demands. If they chose to go just one day later, then you could have decided if you'd be willing to keep your sister for a week. There were workarounds and other options. They just chose to ignore all of them. OP politely declined, and yet they still showed up at the house? And they're calling him all sorts of names? To me, this is proof that they didn't want him to babysit the sister. They were looking to dump the sister off, regardless of what measures they had to go to accomplish it. Not the jerk by a long shot. By all means, taste your words. I used to work as a food receiver in a retirement home kitchen. I won't say the name, but I will say it sounds vaguely Nordic. When I took over as food receiver in the primary kitchen, didn't have much training. I was just told, "You helped the previous guy. You know the most. Job is yours now." Over the next almost 8 years, got that place maximized for peak use of space. Every now and then we would get a new head chef, and they always made the mistake of trying to run it like a restaurant. Usually in about 2 weeks, they'd realize that it was a different vibe and tone and adjust accordingly. Had a great head chef as a boss for about 5 years. He knew that since deliveries were food and to some degree perishable, my schedule needed to be a little fluid and flexible to account for late deliveries while not having me rack up overtime. We worked out a great system where I basically set my own hours and got everything done. Fast forward to a regime change. Head chef was a tool. But with him came a woman whose job title was never told to any of us in the kitchen. We were just told she outranked all of us. First thing she did was decide I would no longer have a fluid schedule. My shifts would be posted on the board like all the others, 2 weeks in advance. I didn't like it, but okay, fair enough. Cut to about 2 weeks later. I had to leave early for a dentist appointment that had been submitted and approved months ago. I reminded her the day before and the day of. Day after, she gives me a dressing down and a written reprimand for leaving before end of scheduled shift. She told me she didn't care what happened before. She never had papers for this request. Luckily for me, the head of the entire dining department, even above head chef, told her that she had been given all of those time off approved papers when she started, and if my shift didn't reflect my pre-approved leaving early, it was her fault for not paying attention. Unluckily, she decided to take it out on me, saying that,
"From now on, once schedule is posted, no changes unless it's in writing and signed by both of us, minimum of 2 days prior. No exceptions."
I looked at the calendar and saw I'd get to have fun and get payback. See, being a food receiver, a monthly job of mine was to do end-of-month inventory on all food, beverage, cleaning items. I had actually created the inventory paperwork myself, so instead of being alphabetical, the items were all listed together based on which area they were in. Dishwasher, chemical closet, freezer, dry food storage, soda syrup room, etc. Meaning after a few months, I could go room to room quickly and be done in less than 2 hours. Catch was, it had to be done either last thing, last day of a month, or first thing, first day of a month, and could not do 2 in the same month, with no weekend deliveries. I worked Monday through Friday. Now, under the old cool-headed chef, if I had to do it on a Saturday or Sunday, I'd just come in and do it, then leave early on a slow day, canceling extra hours. And lo and behold, this was one of those months, where inventory would have to be done on a Saturday or Sunday. Days she had me down as off on the calendar. I grinned like Tim Curry in The Grinch or in Home Alone 2, and I waited. Sure enough, last Friday of the month, she asks me,
"Which day are you coming in to do inventory?"
I told her I wasn't. I was scheduled off. She goes into a tirade about,
"It's your job. You don't tell me no. I'll have you written up," etc.
I calmly told her making the schedule was her job and responsibility, not mine. This earned me,
"I don't care what the schedule says. You're coming in this weekend."
To which I sweetly and sarcastically asked if she had a paper signed by both of us and dated no later than yesterday about us agreeing to this switch. "You know," I said, "the policy you created when you got called out by head office for not properly handling my scheduled early shift?" If smartphones had been common around 2009, I would have taken a picture of her face. I found out from Weekend Crew it took her almost an entire day to do it herself. That was the first of many times she found out that fun way that about half the tasks I did under old regime were technically not required by my work position. I just did them when I had extra time to help a boss that I respected. Am I the jerk for not telling my brother how much something was worth until he re-gifted it to me? I had a boomer great aunt that was a wonderful and lovely woman. She grew up in Eastern Europe right after World War II. One of the weird things about her was that she would just give her old belongings as gifts for weddings and important birthdays. I still have the music box she gave me for my first communion. When we saw family, I would always ask to see their pieces. A few of my aunts had them displayed in china cabinets or out somewhere safe. A few had them collecting dust in a box. I made sure they knew that if the day ever came that they wanted to downsize or something, I would appreciate a chance to grab it for my collection. Some of my cousins took me up on the offer, and I ended up with 6 extra pieces for my room. When I moved out, I made sure that every single part of my collection was safely wrapped and packed. They are my little treasures. I know it's weird. Sorry for being so long-winded, I just love talking about that stuff. I'm about 15 years younger than my eldest brother, and he knows about my collection. When he got married, I was 14. At his gift opening, I saw he got one of her usual gifts. I also saw his wife's face. She was not super grateful. I made sure he knew that I thought it was beautiful, but I didn't ask him to think of me if he wanted to get rid of it. I thought he might like to pass it on to his kid one day. When my aunt passed, she left me the last of her collection, 3 pieces that were a set. I got married last September. My niece, his daughter, was my flower girl. At my gift opening, I could almost hear him giggle when I opened my gift from them. It was the piece from our great aunt. He thought it was super funny, Then he gave us our real gift from our registry. I thanked him profusely for both. He came over the other day and saw my collection in my china cabinet that I inherited. He asked why I was so fascinated with this stuff. I told him that I thought it was amazing and that lots of people collected it. He called BS and started looking it up. The figurine he gave me is worth about $6,700. He said that I was a jerk for not telling him what it was worth. He wants it back. I said that my husband and I were going to give back every piece I got from family as a gift for a special occasion. I already planned to give that piece to my niece for her first communion, along with a little booklet of information about my aunt and the value of the piece so they appreciate it. I know exactly who I got each piece from, and they're all going back to that family. He says I'm being mean accepting a gift from him that's worth so much. I asked him if he ever bothered looking up the value of what he was giving me. He said he thought it was like Precious Moments or Hummel. Whatever. I have family treasures to keep safe for the next generation. I know I would have gotten something awesome from my great aunt if she hadn't passed before my wedding. Not the jerk. He only wanted it when he found out it has monetary value. You want it for its sentimental value and to pass it on to his daughter. Very sweet of you, really. Not the jerk. You're doing something so thoughtful for your family, maintaining some of your history to pass down to the next generation. Your brother is a bit of a jerk asking for a gift back, but seriously, your great aunt would love that you cherish her gifts like this. Want us to look for problems to repair? Okay, if you insist. This happened when I worked at the post office years ago. I was one of about 40 mechanics and electronic technicians on the 3 p.m. to 11:30 shift whose job it was to fix the machines used to process mail. It was a huge facility with thousands of people working there. This may not seem believable today, but first-class mail had to be received, processed, and shipped out within 24 hours. Letters and packages start arriving in the afternoon. Sack of letters and packages are placed on conveyor belts, stamped mail is canceled, all mail is sorted on machines, placed in trays for shipment to their destination, and placed on trucks for shipment directly to the destination post office or the airport. Mail comes between 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. and went out around 5 a.m. Up to 2.5 million stamped letters per day during Christmas, but usually around 600,000, plus metered mail and parcels, every weekday. Our job was basically to sit around, wait for something to break, and fix it ASAP so it would run to the end of the shift. The day shift could do a more permanent fix if necessary. That was our job. Wait for some machinery to break and fix it. We sat in small groups near our machines and read, gossiped, or did whatever. One day, some bigwig saw us and didn't like us sitting around doing nothing. Word came from on high, and we were told to patrol our areas and fix the broken equipment. Our chairs were taken away so we could not sit down. Now comes the malicious compliance. We did as we were told. We patrolled the building. If anyone saw something broken, we shut down the equipment and fixed it. According to safety regulations, we were required to lock out the power source with our individual padlocks and rope off the area. Hey, you 50 clerks, you need to move from under this conveyor belt so we can replace it. Of course, that disables part of the 6-mile-long system, so productivity is lost. Letter sorting machines with 14 clerks are shut down for minor repairs. Stamp canceling machines? The same. Productivity slumped, and hundreds of clerks were required to work overtime that night and morning to make up for equipment being shut down for repairs. I'm sure the first night it cost tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in overtime. After 3 days, our chairs returned, and it was business as usual. I gave my daughter a McDonald's application when she was behaving like a brat. First world problems alert. Our daughter recently turned 16. For her birthday, she was getting a vehicle. She had been learning to drive with my 2010 Nissan Titan while she held her permit. I was gifting her the truck. It was twofold, actually. I had been wanting to get a Silverado. She needed a vehicle. The day before her birthday, I had the truck professionally detailed in and out. I take the utmost care of my vehicles, both cosmetically and mechanically. The truck looks brand new practically. On her birthday, I took her to the DMV. She thought we were there to do her road test and get her license. After she passed, I pulled the Titan's title out and said, "Happy birthday." That's when she pretty much made an embarrassing scene because, "OMG, I'm not driving a grandpa truck, Dad." I'm 39 for the record. She threw a tantrum because she wanted a blue Jeep Wrangler. We walked out momentarily to speak. I wanted her to know exactly how rude her behavior was when her father was giving her a truck that any other 16-year-old would be extremely grateful for. Eventually, she apologized, but we had another hiccup when I told her she'll get full access to it when I get another truck, which was already in the works. I was just waiting on the bank to close the loan. Ultimately, I told her to forget it. She was just acting like a spoiled brat. Later that night, I suppose she thought about her behavior as she began asking questions, then said she realized how immature she acted. She asks, "So, since you were going to sign it over to me, does that mean I could drive it for a bit, sell it, and then put the money towards a Wrangler?" My response was, "Of course you could have. By me signing the vehicle over to you, it was officially yours to do what you'd like with it." She says, "Oh, okay. Well, I've thought about it, and I would like to have it." Nope, doesn't work that way. You gone lost your opportunity, girlie. She totally flipped out, said I should have told her at the DMV she could sell it and keep the money. She told her mother I was being totally unfair. My wife agreed to her not getting the truck, probably because she didn't want me buying a brand new Silverado. The next day, she very sweetly asked for the truck again and then hinted about me finally getting a Silverado. I didn't say anything. I went in my office, printed out a McDonald's employment application. I stuck it in an envelope and handed it to her. She was ecstatic, probably thinking it was the title. She opened it and said, "You suck." I told her, "If you want a Wrangler, get a job." My wife said I was an idiot. I took it way too far. Maybe so, but I've realized our kid needs to learn not only the value of a dollar, but also needs to learn how to be grateful in life. It sucks this happened since it was part of her birthday. I didn't anticipate this type of behavior. It was upsetting. Now every time I look at my truck, all I can think is, it's a grandpa truck. Not the jerk. You are clueless though and need to parent better. There is no way she turned 16 and gained this attitude. She's been like this for a while with others and you thought it was cute. Now it's come back to bite you and so you're trying to teach her a lesson. I guess better late than never. I hope that you both learned something from this experience. Not every bratty teen is the result of bad parenting. I raised my kids exactly the same and one was bratty and two weren't. It took a while for the one with the attitude to grow out of it. Parents don't have control over personality. Two were grateful for the used cars we bought for them, and nothing was good enough for the other one. Exactly what I was thinking. I have 3 kids, and from the paths they took and their personalities, you would never think they had the same parents. I'm still gobsmacked that when we offered to help out our oldest by supplying a car for her to drive, by buying one from a trusted mechanic friend, her first comment was to complain that she didn't want a white one. The sheer entitlement bowled me over. We told her it was that or nothing because we weren't going to take a risk purchasing a second-hand car from an unknown seller. At least she had the grace to be embarrassed about her reaction later, but I'm still stunned that a kid I raised had that little gratitude. I promise you, it was not something that we instilled in her. Thousands of euros for the damaged car. In my home country, living abroad now, the gas stations have people who will fill your tank for you. It's not optional. These people are paid to put fuel in your tank. That's it. I was one of them during my college years. The fuel we had at the station was unleaded Benson 95, 98, and 100, and diesel. One day, a regular customer came over. He was a taxi driver. I had seen him before, both with his taxi car, a Mercedes, and his private car, an Audi. The Mercedes was a diesel car, and the Audi was Benson. Keep in mind, back then, every taxi in the country was running with diesel. That day, he came with a taxi. I noticed he was a bit out of it, but didn't comment on it. I asked how much he wants in the tank. He said, "Full, unleaded, 100. I looked at him strangely. "You mean diesel?" "No, I mean unleaded 100. "But sir, you have the..." I didn't get the chance to point out that he was driving his taxi. He goes, "Young girl, please, I know what fuel my car needs." I look at him one more time. I was getting upset at this point. "Okay, sir. Full tank, unleaded 100. Is that correct?" "Yes, thank you." Right away. And I proceed to put unleaded 100 in his diesel car. He paid and left. 2 days later, he comes again on my shift with his Audi this time. I go out to greet him by trying not to laugh at his face. "What's it gonna be today, sir? Diesel?" I asked, trying to bite my tongue. He eyed me carefully. "Unleaded 100, please. Full tank." "Are you sure?" I asked, and he side-checked his car. "Yes, thank you." "Right away, sir." I fill his tank, and as he was paying, he adds, "Next time, I would appreciate it if you told me I was being an idiot and putting in the incorrect gas to the tank." He said this seriously, but I could see the humor in his eyes. Was the damage that much? I asked. He groaned. You have no idea. Have a good day. And he left. I never found out what the cost was of the damage, but for my duration at that gas station, when I was the one loading his car, he always would go like, full tank, please, without saying what kind. Karen coworker tells everyone I'm not actually British. She really ends up regretting it. For context, I'm a 20-something British-American male living in a very southern and undereducated part of the US. I've been here for a while now, and generally when I tell people where I'm from, I get a little pushback because I don't really have as thick of an accent anymore. On to the story. I work in a small office. We have a rolling line of temps that come and go. Most of them are barely high school graduates or people with very little in the way of worldly experience. This is important for later. So one day, they bring the usual parade of new hires around, and I do my introduction. Hi, I'm OP. I'm one of the recruiters here at Company X. I'm married with 2 dogs, and I am originally from the UK. Normally, this is just a throwaway line that I use as an icebreaker, and it normally rolls right off. Until this one wonderful young woman pipes up. You don't sound British. She, of course, left out the T very purposefully. Me. Sorry, love. Forgot the coat and tails at home, I say as I drink my Twinings. The group kind of laughed it off, and I figured it was a pretty open and shut deal. Nope. A couple of days later, word gets around that this chick has been telling a bunch of people that I'm not British and that I'm lying for clout. She said that I don't even sound British and that she is dating a British guy and knows how they act. So rather than being a mature adult, I do the very British thing of malicious compliance. I need an intern to bring me some tea. Would you mind climbing the apple and pears and pouring me a cup of Rosie Lee? I started wearing 3-piece suits, a pocket watch, and a monocle I found at a thrift shop. I went Super Saiyan 3 British. Obviously, about 3 hours into the first day, my boss wants to know what's up. I tell her, and she finds it so hilarious that she assigns that intern to me for the rest of the day. I kept using odd British rhyming phrases and sayings that she would have to keep asking me to speak normal. I would reply, "But I thought you knew how us British people act." She quickly realized her error, and we've been cordial ever since. Nowadays, I keep my old red passport in my desk drawer just in case someone pulls that stunt again. And for the record, I'm not British, I'm English, and a Scouser at that.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.